The only way you're going to be able to embrace where you currently are right now in your life is to realize that you are not where you once were. And I know you don't want to hear that, but that is the truth. So, with that being said, welcome or welcome back. It's your favorite mental health specialist, High Guidance, and that is what we're going to be talking about in today's video. Now, with that being said, because there's no right or wrong way to heal yourself, always and only take what resonates as well as leave the rest. So if it does not apply, then that means it is not in a line, which means it is not for you. So don't force it, as well as grab your pens, grab your paper, and be prepared to take notes. For the month of May, we have been going over and discussing how life is going to change. Things are not going to be what they once were, and that life is going to continue to move on despite of how we feel. So for today's video, we're going to talk about how you can start to embrace where you currently are right now when you feel like nothing is working out for you, and if you've been struggling to let go of your past, as well as some recommendations, some reminders, some disclaimers, and just certain things that you should be aware of. So starting off with the introduction, starting off the first disclaimer, you have to realize that in order for you to get to where you need to be, you have had to experience certain chapters and certain moments of your life to get you there. So even though you may not be where you want to be right now, you're not where you once were. And even though you may feel like that's not a big deal, it actually is. The reason why it's a big deal and the reason why it's so imperative for you to learn to be grateful for that and accept that is because had you not go through certain things in life, you wouldn't realize what's for you and what's not. If you knew better, don't you think you would be doing better? And a lot of times it's not that you necessarily don't know any better, but you may not have had the resources and the tools and the guidance and the wisdom or even the experience or the community or even the finances based off of your circumstances to comprehend and have the capacity to understand what you should or should not have been doing. Worrying about what happened is not going to change what's currently going on right now. If something has already moved on, you have to move on, because the longer you continue to hold on to these memories, the longer you're going to stay in this cycle of negativity and doubt and insecurity, fear, anger, and even resentment. So the second disclaimer is knowing that you have to really take your time with learning to let go of what something once was. And of course, in the recommendations, we're going to break that down. But it's like, what has helped me along my healing journey was to realize that the longer I was attached to certain mindsets and certain behaviors and certain emotions that were not serving me, the longer I felt like frustrated, the longer I felt like, what's the point? And the point is that you don't get to live in life physically forever. And it's not fair for you to not become the person you want to be just because you went through certain things. And a lot of times also, before I get into the third disclaimer, it's challenging and difficult because you're having to go through it in real time. Like when you go through significant amount of trauma and trials and tribulations, yes, it does change your perspective. Yes, it does sometimes maybe distort your image or your perception. Yes, it can cause you to feel a certain type of way, negative or positive. But just because you are changing and you're growing doesn't mean that you have to stay still or that you cannot change and become better. Like just because you may have grown up in poverty as a child and a teenager doesn't mean that you can't change that reality and as a young adult and as a mature person become financially literate or financially abundant or wealthy. We have to realize that yes, you're going to go through things in life. Yes, you may have understanding. Yes, you may not. As long as you have the opportunity to continue to do better, you have to show up. You have to do the best that you can. And that's the third disclaimer. There's only 24 hours in a day. You're only one person. And this is your first time living in this reality with this vessel. Now, if you were here before and after life, that's your business, okay? But you have to know that this is what's happening right now. This is what you've accumulated. This is what you've experienced. Until you're able to realize that letting go is a process and that it's not a one size fit all, You allowing yourself to grieve and make peace with who you once were will allow you to be present. And the more you're able to be present, the more you don't have to worry about what's going to happen later in life, because it's not happening. And the more you're able to be grateful that you don't have to go backwards. You don't have to keep looking back. A lot of us are looking back because we are not being present. You have to be present. That's the best way to live your life, is to just be in the moment. When you are anxious and overwhelmed, it's a lot of times because you're too worried about things that haven't even happened. And if you've been feeling like angry or resentful or envious or frustrated, it's because you've read about something that has already happened. And unless you're able to contribute into the situation, it's done and over with. And that is the process, and that's the fourth disclaimer. Because healing is not a one-size-fits-all, you have to allow yourself to grieve. And grieving is going to take time, especially if you didn't have the finances, you didn't have the resources, you didn't have the community, you didn't have what you have now. Especially when you have gone through certain things and you know you haven't deserved it. So like if you were bullied, if you were neglected, if you grew up around dysfunction, if you grew up around narcissists, if you grew up in poverty, whatever trials and tribulations, whatever horror stories, whatever, anything that you experience, when you know you were just doing the best that you can, or maybe you were minding your business, people took advantage of you, whatever it was, when you know you are naive or even innocent or just a beautiful person, which I know you are, it's not really fair for you to be too upset and too disappointed, because it's like you didn't have those intentions. And that's the main reason why, before I get into recommendations, you have to continue to show up and embrace where you currently are right now and learn to be proud. Learn to be proud about your past until you can realize, you know what, that's who I was and that's not who I am today, or that's not who I'm going to be in the future. You're going to be angry. So lastly, before we get into the recommendations, continue to process what has happened to you, and if you need to, make sure you're only surrounding yourself with people who have the emotional and mental and psychological and physical capacity to understand you, to appreciate you without judgment, shame, or embarrassment. Because it's like when you're grieving and you may not have support, a lot of times you'll feel lonely. You're not lonely, you're just alone. And if you believe in like the gods and the ancestors in the universe, you need to be able to build a relationship. Because if you're not seeing a therapist, if you're not seeing a psychiatrist, and you don't have people to confide in, you're going to feel like you're losing your mind. And that's if you choose to believe in that. I'm not here to force religion or spirituality, so take what resonates, leave the rest. So now, getting into the first recommendation, I've already stated, you have to change your perspective. And in order for you to change your perspective, on your notes, I am challenging you guys and in the comment section to write down the most significant trials and tribulations or the traumatic situations that you experienced in your life. Like, if you remember in detail, like what happened, right, before. So scratch that. Before, I want you to write down, the first thing I want you to do, you guys, I'm saying this in real time. Like, I have my notes, but I'm trying to like say this off the top of my head. The first thing I want you to do is write down who you once were in your notes. Whether it's on the top, like, okay, or if it's in columns, I want you to write down who you were. Then the second thing I need you to do is to write down what happened to you. Whatever traumatic situation that's bothering you the most, what happened to you. The third thing I need you to do is to write down how it made you feel. And as you're writing it down, I need you to read it out loud to yourself or to someone that you trust and can find. And the reason why you need to be able to process this and do it in this order is because you have to realize that version of you is who got you up until that point. What happened to you is the result of who you once were. And how it made you feel is going to help you be present and allow you to become better or change. So the second recommendation, once you realize who you were before you experienced trials and tribulations, what happened to you and how it made you feel, is to realize that it is okay that you're not who you once were. And in order for you to be okay with that, is to allow yourself to be specific about how it made you feel. So that's the second column for the first recommendation. When you were being touched on inappropriately, when you grew up in poverty, when people took advantage of you, when you were abused, whatever it was, how did it make you feel? And I need you to say I. So for example, you would put, I felt angry, I felt mad, I felt frustrated, I felt disappointed, I felt furious, I could not believe what happened to me, I was shocked, I did not deserve that. You need to express, and you need to be able to be aware of what it is that you felt. Because once you can confirm what it is, the third recommendation is to figure out, okay, what can you do with your emotions? What can you do to no longer feel that way? So if you feel some type of way specifically, let me know in the comment section. Make sure you guys are following me on all my social media platforms. It's in the description. If you would like a more intimate environment, make sure you guys book a service in a session by dropping the word website or click the link in the description down below. And follow me on all my social media platforms like on Instagram and on TikTok if you guys want me to go live talking about this in real time. You have to be able to come up with ways to handle your emotions, and you need to come up with solutions. But you can't come up with a solution until you realize who you once were, what happened to you, and how it made you feel. And allowing yourself to feel, and that's the fourth recommendation. You have to feel the anger. You can't just act like nothing didn't happen to you, because when you try to act like nothing happened to you, it's going to eat you up subconsciously and consciously. And that's when you start to project, that's when you start to deflect, and that's when you self-sabotage. And that's the main reason why, too, it may be challenging and difficult for you to accept where you were, because you're self-sabotaging, because you know that the future version of you or who you want to be, even if you have always known who you were or if you had to learn over time, is not willing to tolerate certain things. But because you did, it makes you feel some type of way. Like your future self is like, I'm better than this, or I don't deserve this. Meanwhile, you're having to recover and let go of the past, who was the one who was suffering or who was abused or whatever it was. Allow yourself to really take some time for yourself. Healing, depending on, like I said, what it is that you've gone through, is an experience within itself, and it's a journey. And anybody, like I said, who makes you feel bad about being vulnerable or being honest or expressing yourself, I don't recommend that you surround yourself with. If people can't be held accountable, if people want to gaslight you, if people can't pour into you, you need to remove yourself from them, because it's not going to help you. So the last recommendation when learning to embrace and change your perspective when it comes to you, like, being where you currently are right now, despite of how you feel, is just knowing that you have to practice. You have to continue to show up. The more you can improve your attitude, the more you can learn to be grateful, the more you're able to focus on what you do have and what it is that you want, the more you have to go through the process and make things happen. And that's the uncomfortable truth. That's the most honest thing that nobody's going to tell you. Like, in order to accept where you are, even though you don't want to be here, you have to go through it, because that's the only way out. The only way you're going to make it to the other side is if you get to the other side. Like, you have to cross the finish line. That's the only way, because if you stop, it's going to feel like HE double hockey sticks. So it's just like, if you don't like it now, you're not going to like it later. You have to continue to show up. You have to continue to work on your gratitude. You're going to have to continue to work on your attitude. You're going to have to continue to come up with solutions. So if you guys want a part 2, let me know. Let me know what resonated with you. Let me know what you need to work on. And because I've already plugged in my social medias, make sure you guys are liking and engaging. I'm going to go ahead and end off the video. But I love you. You are loved. You're not alone. Until next time, thanks for watching. Peace.